You are now listening to the Be Your Own #Love Goals podcast with Moe Ari
and Tiffany.
We just want you to remember that every person, regardless of identity, wants these three things: belonging, authenticity, and love.
And after a decade of partnership, we've learned to co-create these things and so much more.
So from wherever you're listening, we're going to go on a journey of becoming our own #Love Goals. Now let's get into this episode. Hey, it's Moe Ari
and Tiffany.
And this is the Be Your Own Love Goals podcast. We are excited to talk about a new tool that we have been using. It's not new, it's been around for a while, but it is a new tool for us that we've been using to cultivate more intentional conversations, more gentle communication. And the tool is nonviolent communication. It was developed by Marshall Rosenberg, I believe is his name.
Yep.
Marshall Rosenberg. And I've actually been listening to the book on Audible, and I have the physical book.
Yeah.
Tiffany has my physical book, and she's marking it all up while we're listening to it.
On Audible too.
Yeah.
Lots of reinforcement.
Lots of reinforcement.
Yeah.
I'm extremely glad that we've discovered this. I bought the book first as like a therapy tool. I like to just stay on top of like my strategies. And I realized, I really need this. So yeah, it's been a journey being in a relationship for a long time, also being a therapist.
Yeah.
You develop a lot of tools along the way. And it's always been interesting to see if you apply all of the tools to your relationship, because you don't want to come into the relationship as an expert, right? Like, I'm always clear to take off the therapy hat, but sometimes that means that I miss applying certain strategies that I would apply in my professional life to our relationship. So nonviolent communication has been one of those tools where I'm like, actually, I think this would benefit us. I don't know if anybody listening can relate.
Yes.
But I did not grow up in a non-violently communicating place.
Neither did I.
And it's not, the idea of nonviolent communication does not suggest that all other forms of communication are violent, but it really, the strategies help us to highlight the ways in which our thoughts and the ways that we approach conversations can create the sense of threat before we even go into a conversation. I remember one of the conversations we had in the pandemic around like parenting, other things. I think I ended up saying, this just feels like a fight or a war or something. And he was like, you were like, that perspective in itself can create a battle or a struggle. And I was like, I take that in. And as I've begun to immerse myself in nonviolent communication and learn more about that, I can really see how the narratives that we have about our relationships, about what's happening in our communication, can really impact how we show up, what we believe. And so nonviolent communication ends up being a really great tool. Is there anything you want to say about nonviolent communication to kind of lay the background for why we're having this conversation or why this work is important?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. The one thing I would add is that you don't have to be physically violent for communication to be violent. And so I think when you first introduced the book to me, I was like, I don't need nonviolent communication. Like, I'm not doing anything like physical or like that is violent. And so just thinking about how some of the ways that we operate, like you're saying, the narratives that we had or the messages that we've gotten, whether it's from society or our families of origin, how they really don't serve us, and they can really be very violent when communicating with another person.
Yeah, and when we talk about violence, I think if violence feels like it has all of this stuff wrapped up in it, we can just talk about harm.
Yeah.
Like, harms get created through our communication
Mhm.
when we are not conscious and intentional and deliberate with how
Yeah.
we're speaking.
Mhm.
And this is of course like an uphill battle, like Tiffany's, it's
Yes.
uphill, up climbing up the mountain in flip-flops
Come
for
on.
me to learn to communicate in this way.
Mhm.
However, it's very aligned with my compassionate and very empathic approach that I want
Mhm.
to have
Mhm.
toward my life.
Mhm.
Something that Marshall says in the book is that nonviolent communication isn't for people who want to negotiate and win. It's not for people who want to
Mhm.
just get their way. It's not about getting your
Yeah.
way.
Mhm.
Nonviolent communication is not a negotiation
Mhm.
tactic.
Mhm.
Nonviolent communication is for people who, and I'm not going to be directly quoting him, but I gathered that nonviolent communication is for people who actually want to understand and empathize with other people better and want to approach all communication from a compassionate place.
Mhm. Mhm.
So he very clearly says, though, with two almost a direct quote, nonviolent communication is not for people who want to negotiate and get their way.
Mhm.
It is for people who want to be more compassionate
Yeah.
in their communication.
Mhm.
So I really like this as a tool
Mhm.
to prevent harm.
Yeah.
But beyond that, to work through harms, right?
Yes. Because they'll happen.
They'll
By nature
happen.
of us all being human, they'll happen, but how we respond to it, how we, operate in it and recover from that harm is another piece of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So to Tiffany's earlier point, for anybody listening who might be like, well, there's nothing wrong with my communication. I don't think that there has to be anything wrong per se.
Mhm.
Let's say doesn't have to be something extremely
Mhm.
devastating about the way that you
Yeah.
communicate in order to benefit from nonviolent
Yep.
communication.
Yep.
The tools employed in nonviolent communication, like well, I won't go into the tools, but just you can learn a lot and be more deeply empathic and compassionate through the process of utilizing
Mhm.
nonviolent communication. Uh, and that can benefit your relationship overall. There's not
Mhm.
a negative to using it. And
Mm-mm.
so then I see that as a very positive
Positive. Yeah.
thing. There are certainly a lot of benefits to speaking to others with compassion.
Yes.
So let's just jump right
Yeah.
in to some of the strategies in the book.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we've already, just laid out what nonviolent communication is.
Mhm.
I'll say the four components of nonviolent communication that are
Mhm.
important to understand
Mhm.
are observations,
Yeah.
feelings,
Mhm.
needs, and requests.
Yeah.
Let's talk about each of those. So,
Yeah.
observations, feelings, needs, and requests. Let's
Mhm.
talk about each of those.
Mhm.
So, when we talk about making an observation,
Mm.
Tiffany has become observation police. Um,
I try.
well, I think Marshall would disagree with you trying, but Tiffany has become not observation
Yeah.
police because what we've learned in the well, I'll let you talk about it because you have
Yeah.
become so fascinated with this concept.
So at the root of it, observation is just noticing something without judgment, right?
Yeah.
And so going through this process and reading this book, I realized how myself personally makes a lot of judgment, even when
Yeah.
I'm just making an observation, what I presume to be an
Yeah.
observation. And I have been very um intently listening to whether someone gives an observation or not. And I have found how difficult it is to describe something
Yeah.
without judgment.
Without judgment, without analyzing it, analyzing why you
Just for
think
the
it's
heck of
happening.
it.
Can you
Like,
give an example of that? Give an example of what an observation is, and then give an example of what the analysis or judgment might look like.
so an example might be, hmm.
Do you need me to give the
Yeah,
example?
give your example.
Okay, an example of an observation might be like, Tiffany, I noticed that you didn't take out the trash yesterday.
Mhm.
That's an observation. She didn't take out the trash.
Mm-mm.
I took out the trash.
Mhm.
An analysis or a judgment of that, let's say an analysis might look like, Tiffany, I noticed you didn't take out the trash because you were tired and because you just forget
Mhm.
about the trash every time.
Mhm.
You expect me
That's
to take out the
loaded.
trash. That's a lot. The judgment is, I'm so upset with you for not taking out this trash
Mhm.
and not really respecting
Mhm.
our agreement.
Mhm. Mhm.
Marshall, I believe his name is Rosenberg.
Yeah.
He would say that that extra piece of like, I'm upset with you. Upset is not necessarily a feeling. And it
Mhm.
usually comes along with all this other stuff that's
Yeah.
loaded down with it. We talk about feelings in a second. And so when you're this, it's not an observation to say all of that. I'm upset
Yeah.
with you. You, the reason why you didn't do it, you must have been not caring about what I said.
Mhm.
That's all analysis and judgment. And it's
Mhm.
very, very hard to
Mhm.
stop doing.
Mhm. It is.
But so first, observing without judgment is this like really, really important.
Right, because it allows everyone to be able to see what's actually happening. It's like saying something as simple as, that curtain is blue."
Mhm.
Right? Like, that is what it is. Now, that's a very simple example,
Yeah.
but it allows everybody to kinda get on the same page about what is actually happening without evaluation, without
Right.
judgment, without any of that,
Right.
as the first step.
Right.
Mhm.
Because what we're moving into next is our feeling.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, Marshall Rosenberg then in the book says a lot about how in the human language we have all kinds of ways of describing these judgments and analyses, but we don't really have a lot of ways.
Mm-mm.
We do have plenty of language. We don't often have it in our
Yeah.
vocabulary, even as adults, to describe our feelings. It's the same amount of words we could use to describe our vitriol.
Mhm.
We often cannot describe our emotions.
No.
And so often as a therapist, I'm sitting with people and we look at the feelings chart or an emotions wheel
Mhm.
in order to identify feelings. And that's something
Mhm.
you can Google right now, feelings
Mhm.
chart or
Feeling sure.
emotions wheel, to
Yeah.
begin to expand your vocabulary on emotions and
Mhm.
feelings.
Mhm.
And Marshall also challenges that words like, I feel I feel attacked or I feel judged. I feel uh not seen.
Mhm.
I feel rejected. These are not feelings.
Mhm.
They are feelings that are loaded down with a
Yeah.
lot of analysis. All of those feelings words that I just named
Mhm.
come with something that we perceive the other person doing to us.
Yeah.
So they're not really feelings.
Mhm.
And there are better feelings, or they are feelings, but they are not the most nonviolent feelings to utilize
Mhm.
because they come with a lot of analysis
Mhm.
and a
Mhm.
lot of assumption about what
Yep.
we think is being done to us.
Mhm. They do, and it's important, the feelings part, it's important to know how you feel. I think oftentimes we don't start these statements with "I." It's like, "It feels like," or
Yeah.
even just saying "feels like," it often is, not necessarily a feeling that you're owning, and it's really important to say, "I feel X."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I would say, with the feelings, it's also important, and I think they kind of go hand in hand, to express your needs.
Mhm.
So to express personally, what do you need in a
Mhm.
situation? Like, I need to spend more time with you.
Well, needs is the next pillar.
Right.
So, observations, feelings,
Feelings.
needs,
Mhm.
because we want to shift from just talking about what we are feeling in response to what we observed to talking about what it is that we actually want. This can sometimes be the most vulnerable part of
Mhm.
this. Yeah, I just
Mhm.
wanted to add that before we
Yeah.
launch in, just setting that up. Needs is the next component of nonviolent communication.
Mhm. And as I've been practicing, I've noticed that when I have difficulty expressing what I might be feeling at a particular moment, sometimes it's easier able to access what I need, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm like, I feel attacked, for instance, if that's where I'm thinking is if that's the thing I'm thinking I want to say, I might it's easier then for me to say, okay, actually, I don't feel attacked. I need you to listen to me in this moment. And so sometimes I feel like it can be easier if you're having difficulty with naming a particular feeling, naming what you need can help you to identify the feeling with more clarity.
And I think that that's not typical for most people.
Mm.
I think that is from my years as a therapist.
Okay.
I don't think that most people would say it's easy for them to identify what they need. Because a lot of times, if we could identify what we need, we wouldn't be having the conversation. And so often, and I think Marshall actually gets to this in the third section of the book. He talks a lot about how if he asks people what they need, they'll often go, I don't know. And he's like, I
Mm.
figured you might say that.
Mm.
Because if I
Okay.
just ask you what you need, just flat out, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
Mhm.
I find that in therapy as well, that's the same.
Mhm.
I'm thinking you have particular strengths around being able to your strength is that I don't want to analyze that for
Go
you, but
ahead.
like I think because your feelings and you're so empathic that sometimes it can be a lot to feel all of those feelings. So focusing on need helps you to like kind of like ease into the feeling.
Mhm.
I think that you're utilizing that as a bridge or a strength. For
Mhm.
a lot of people, it's the most vulnerable thing to do is to say out loud what it is that you actually wanted because
Mhm.
we're afraid of rejection. That's
Mhm.
what starts us out in blaming and focusing on the other person.
Mhm.
And focus. There was obviously an unmet need, or we wouldn't be having the
Mhm.
conversation. And
Mhm.
that's usually underlying all of that analysis and the pointing and all of that.
Right.
So it's usually the thing that we barricaded underneath all
Mhm.
of that. For
Mhm.
you, though, that's your bridge to the emotion because the
Yeah.
emotion is the thing you might barricade.
Mhm.
But for
Absolutely.
most people, the emotion and the need are like so intertwined that it
Mm.
takes a great deal of vulnerability getting to that emotion to even be able to say out loud, I actually wanted X.
Mm. I can see that. I can see that.
So I've spent a lot of time with couples trying to get to that.
Mhm.
I don't need anything. I need her to stop acting like that.
Mhm.
No, there's something you actually want in all of this, but
Mhm.
it's just so hard to say it because we're so afraid we're not going to get it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think I just want to say that out loud because I think it's a testament to your personality that you're like
Mhm.
able to use that to get there.
I mean, the feelings part is that's a whole other thing, but I can easily say like, "I need a hug." Now, I
Mm,
might not be able to say why or what I'm
yeah,
feeling that is leading me to needing this hug, but I know I need a hug.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think there's no right or wrong way. I
Mhm.
just think that from what I'm gathering from the book,
Mhm.
that you want to be able to do
Yeah,
all of
for
this
sure.
in order to be able to have the impact of repeatedly getting what you want,
Mhm.
but not out of the purpose of just getting your way,
Yeah.
but in order to communicate it in a way that is going to have it be received not as a demand.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then this moves into that next part, the last
Mhm.
component, which is making requests.
Mm.
So then it's stating what you needed, also asking for what it is that
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah. The asking. I think again for me, this is the area that I struggle. And I think it's because there takes a level of vulnerability and empathy in requesting what you
Yeah.
want. So, you could have gone through these pillars of doing the observations correctly or in a way that supports everyone involved, expressing your feelings, expressing what you needed. But when it comes to the request,
Yeah.
there takes a level of vulnerability to say, can you do X? Can we do X? That I
Yeah.
think you have to really be willing to lean in and
Yeah.
have, humility about requesting and also just honoring your voice, honoring your
Mhm.
feelings, honoring your own needs. If you aren't able to do that, then it's probably, again, gonna be a struggle to be able to communicate or ask for what you need.
Yeah, and it's a deliberate choice
Mhm.
to be nonviolent in communication and to practice these tools. So I think you're absolutely right. It requires that you lean in. It
Mhm.
will require that you um, spend time understanding where your challenges are around vulnerability. It's just all of these components end up being so necessary. So
Mhm.
if we go back to the example that I gave earlier about not taking out the trash.
Mhm.
So let's say the observation is that, let's say I didn't take out the trash. So the
Mhm.
observation is that Mo didn't take out the trash.
Mhm.
Then the feeling could be, I'm feeling disappointed.
Mhm.
The need, Tiffany could say, I'm feeling disappointed. The need could then be, I wanted you to take out the trash so that the trash was not, or I'm having a need for you to take out the trash because
Mhm.
I don't want the trash to get missed on the pickup day.
Mhm.
And then the request could be, can you please take out the trash now or
Mhm.
make sure that you take out the trash in the future?
Right.
Going through that entire process allows us to communicate in a way where it could be well received.
Mhm. Mhm.
If I would have started in with just, or Tiffany would have started in with just an analysis, why didn't you take out the trash? You know
Mhm.
you're supposed to take out the trash. I can't
Yeah.
believe you'd be so unresponsible.
Mhm.
We're gonna miss the trash collection
Mhm.
pickup. I would have no way
Mhm.
of understanding what her actual need is in
Yeah.
that scenario, what it is that she's wanting from me. So
Mhm.
then we just be arguing in circles because for the life of me, I can't understand why she gets so mad.
Exactly.
How often
Exactly.
in arguments are we just responding to the level of upset that someone has, not even what they're saying?
Exactly.
So it's really important that when we are sharing what we're feeling, that we're also offering it in a way that the person can receive it,
Mhm.
because there's a giver and a receiver in all communication.
Yeah.
We don't want to throw blows at that person every time we have an upset. We
Mhm.
might have learned that. Many of us have learned that.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I was practicing therapy for a long time that I realized, yeah, I was the nicest person from where I come from, but I have a
Mhm.
long way to go. There are so
Mhm.
many other tools and strategies to
Right.
employ. And this really isn't about being nice. It's really
Mhm.
about being responsible for the ways that I show up in the
Yeah.
world.
Mhm.
So when we talk about, so we went over the
4
main
pillars.
components. You
Mhm.
call them, yes, the four pillars, the four main components of
Mhm.
nonviolent communication, and that is
Observation, feelings, needs, and requests.
beautiful. You all say that about 4 times, so you remember in your conversation: observation, feeling, need, request. If you don't remember one, just start from what you remember and
Yeah.
try to form what you're saying
Mhm.
from that place. As we keep moving forward, there are some tools as a part of nonviolent communication that will make you successful.
Mhm.
One of them is active listening. That is a therapy tool that I
Yeah.
learned very early on. Active listening is the process of being very present
Mhm.
and making eye contact,
Mhm.
nodding your head,
Mhm.
saying mm-hmm, like
Mhm.
Tiffany's doing,
Mhm.
to show that you are really listening
Yeah.
very intently.
Mhm.
Active listening involves allowing your body language to be leaned in and
Yeah.
very, very present. So, active listening is a way of being engaged and showing up with eye contact, delivering body language that shows
Right.
that you're listening.
Right.
Active listening is an important part of nonviolent communication because when we are listened to in this very intent way, anybody ever been to a therapist, it feels good to be listened to like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Even without them saying anything,
Yeah.
we as therapists are able to create rapport,
Yeah.
grounding and safety and nurture through active listening.
Mhm.
So that's a tool.
Mhm.
Sometimes when I write up notes, I just put actively listen, right? That's an
Yeah.
intervention. And
Yeah.
so it's no wonder why he's included this in nonviolent communication because it does help people to feel healed.
Mhm.
What's another tool to
Um, Also responding when you respond to someone, reflecting back what they said. So reflective responding. So if you are
Yeah,
like, "Babe, I really need to spend more time with you." Me responding to that by saying, "Mo, I hear you saying you really need to spend more time with me."
yeah,
It shows that I listen to what you're saying,
yeah,
and if I repeat something back to you that's not fully maybe what you meant or what you said, it allows the opportunity for you to correct it.
yeah.
And for me, it creates a dynamic where I feel like the other person is listening
Mhm.
and I feel like we're on the same page. So like, okay, we're on the same page about what we heard. Now we can
Right.
move forward from there.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. That's a really good tool. Reflective
Yeah.
responding,
Mhm.
another therapy tool that is helpful. You might have heard of speaker listener.
Yeah.
That's another practice in therapy that allows you to practice this reflective responding.
Mhm.
I unfortunately do not practice this enough in my relationship with Tiffany, so I've been like
Mhm.
practicing it a lot more
Yeah.
in order to allow her to know that I'm hearing her
Mhm.
and that I'm really computing what she's saying.
Mhm.
In the Audible book, Marshall gives, or the book in general, Marshall gives some really, really, really great advice about uh, this reflective responding. Sometimes people are resistant. So if you ask them to repeat back what they heard from you,
Mhm.
they might say, I've got it. I'm not an idiot. I know
Mhm.
what you said.
Mhm.
And so if you meet somebody who's resistant, don't get into your narratives about how they're responding to you. You could say something to them like, I asked you to respond. He said you could say two things. You could say, I'm noticing
Mm.
that uh I'm noticing that you're telling me you've got it and you
Mhm.
understand.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if my request that you repeat my words back to me came across to you like I thought you didn't understand.
Mm.
So to engage them, they might say
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm. That's helpful.
Another way of following up with this person if they get upset is to say, I requested that you repeat back to me just to make sure that I understand,
Mhm.
um, just to make sure that I was clear in how I
Mhm.
communicated to
Right.
you, because I want to be clear in how I'm communicating to you, and I didn't want my request to come across as a demand, and I
Mhm.
apologize if that is how
Mhm.
it came across.
Mhm. Mhm.
So he gives a lot of his strategies to deal with if somebody is not receptive to
Mhm.
reflective responding.
Mhm.
Another way that we can approach this nonviolent communication is through open-ended questions. Can
Mhm.
you give an example of an open-ended question?
An open-ended question might be, "How are you feeling?" versus, "Are you feeling upset?"
Yeah.
Because
Perfect.
one is suggestive and one is truly, "I'm curious."
Yeah. Something that I used to do a lot that I'm trying to be delivered from doing is that I would like if I noticed something was upsetting
Yeah.
Tiffany, I would jokingly trying to lighten the mood,
Yeah.
but she did not like it.
Mhm.
I would be like, "You got a little attitude?
Yes, you love that.
You got a little attitude?"
Yeah.
And I'm playing,
Mhm.
but she didn't like me labeling her feeling. It's not an
Mhm.
open-ended question, and it didn't come
Mhm.
across as supportive, even though
Yeah.
I was trying to get her to join me in being lighthearted.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so if I took the approach of saying, "Hey, babe, I noticed you might be feeling something. I'm wondering how you're feeling." She might get lighthearted.
Mhm.
There are so many pathways to this.
Yeah.
And so Marshall Rosenberg would suggest going about that a different way and using an
Yeah.
open-ended question.
Right. And yeah, I think it's very helpful. And one of the another tool that he also encourages people to use is validation. And I
Mhm.
think validation is one of those underestimated things. It's
Yeah.
like if a person says, "I am feeling disappointed," let's
Yeah.
say, validating that. You might not agree. You might
Mhm.
not feel like it's yeah, you might not agree, but simply saying, "I hear you saying,"
Yeah.
or "I validate that you are feeling disappointed. You're feeling
Yeah.
disappointed." And it's
Yeah.
just that
It's
simple.
just that simple.
No judgment,
Mhm.
no pushback, just, "I recognize that you're feeling disappointed."
Yeah. I think validation can be such a beautiful tool for uh, navigating any kind of conflict with nonviolent communication. And I think just wanting to leave you all with some more things to keep in mind with
Mhm.
nonviolent communication um, is to just remember the process of empathy.
Mhm.
And essential to this practice,
Mhm.
avoiding blame and accusations.
Yeah.
So not pointing the finger, that's only going to like inflame any kind of conversation you're
Mhm.
having.
Mhm.
Staying present,
Yeah.
seeking common ground as the
Mhm.
central goal for nonviolent
Right.
communication, using neutral language,
Mhm.
being open to
Yes.
compromise,
Yes.
staying solution focused, so not
Mhm.
getting caught in the weeds and you
Yeah.
said this and you said
Oh my
that,
god.
being intentional about your language.
Mhm.
We can go on. What we'll do is that we will leave these strategies in they'll be in a blog post
Mhm.
on our website at
Yeah.
lovegoespodcast.com
Yeah.
so that you can review nonviolent communication strategies
Mhm.
because I think this is such a helpful tool. We also encourage you to just go buy the book.
Yeah, it's it's a great book. It's a great read, not only to help you in your romantic relationships, but I would say all relationships, to be honest.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you're curious, go ahead and get that Audible subscription. Listen to I'm not getting paid by Audible to say this, but listen to nonviolent communication on your ride to work,
Mhm.
your ride home. You can pick up the book and read it. But
Mhm.
I encourage you all to practice some of these tools and strategies with your partner
Mhm.
right now
Mhm.
or with your loved ones, with your
Yes.
friends.
Yes. Yes, and I know that this might be overwhelming. We gave you a lot of pillars and tools from the book, of course, and taking it one thing at a time, implementing them in baby steps, I think can improve over time. And it's like it's a constant evolving process, and so I know that we all have intentions, or most of us have intentions of communicating in a way that is compassionate
Yeah.
and kind, and implementing one of these things in your next conversation, I think, can make a huge difference. So I just want to say, like, I am with you. We're with you. We're going through this together. We're actively
Yeah.
going up this mountain in flip-flops together.
Together.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you
Mhm.
all so much for listening and definitely go ahead and check out that book.
Yep.
The strategies have helped us. We're definitely going up this mountain in flip flops together, like
Yep.
Tiffany said.
Mhm.
This has been a beautiful episode of the Be Your Own Love Goals podcast with Moe Ari.
And
Have a
Tiffany.
great day and be well.
Bye. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Video episodes are on YouTube and Spotify.
If you want your question included in an upcoming episode, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Be Your Own Love Goals or check out our website at lovegoalspodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
Bye.